Kaga wakes up in a stable, probably reeking of horse and can't remember what happened after playing some dumb online game. Then, out of nowhere, he sees a horse, and apparently, this genius boy needs his skill called Identify to figure out that it's a horse. Really, even a toddler knows what a horse looks like. But hey, at least this skill reveals his name, his level, and his gender. And get this, Kaga is all impressed that the game recreated his sorry self perfectly. How sad is that? He's still wearing the same tracksuit he probably wore for days straight, and to top it off, he's even barefooted. But he miraculously spots some sandals in the corner of the stable. And of course, he uses his precious Identify skill yet again to figure out that they're actually sandals. But you know what really grinds my gears? This whiner Kaga complaining about how swapping equipment works better in some stupid game where you can just click a button, rather than in the VR world. Kaga feels a tad guilty for stealing someone else's equipment. Apparently, this guy conveniently remembers selecting some bonus equipment, and thanks to his precious Identify skill, he spots a sword called Durandal buried under a stack of hay. I guess we're supposed to be amazed by his amazing luck, huh? So this Durandal sword is apparently some top-notch weapon with great offensive power, as if that's something to be impressed about. It even has HP and MP absorption, because apparently this game wants to hold your hand and make everything easier for you. And let's not forget the oh-so-exciting incantation interruption. Oh, and look, Kaga also found a fancy little accessory called the Ring of Determination. It increases his offensive power and provides him with personal strengthening. But oh no, poor Kaga doesn't have a clue how the VR works. He's just wandering around these so-called savage lands, expecting danger and excitement. But what does he get? Disappointment. Because, of course, the grassy fields are just so peaceful and boring. And now, this genius decides to hide behind a stable because he hears people nearby. Two people pass by, a level 5 villager and a level 15 farmer. But wait, there's a commotion in the distance. Kaga uses his Identify skill once again and deduces that the game starts with a bandit attack. Wow, what a genius deduction. He questions whether villagers will be okay, even though they're roughly the same level as the attackers. Oh, the suspense. Will the villagers survive? Spoiler alert, probably not. And let's not forget about the bandits. The highest among them is a level 41 thief named Hugo. He's equipped with an iron sword, iron armor, leather boots, and a thief's bandana. And here we go, the battle begins. Surprise, surprise, the bandits quickly overpower the villagers, just as Kaga predicted. But wait, Kaga spots an opportunity to be a sneaky little backstabber. He grips his Durandal, ready to make his move. His heart is beating out of his chest, probably from the excitement of finally doing something remotely interesting in this sorry excuse for a game. And what happens next? Kaga manages to slice right through Hugo's neck, causing blood to spray everywhere. But hey, Kaga is a master of kendo, apparently. He ruthlessly eradicates the bandit group, and even their feeble attempts at running away are futile. They all become mere experience points for this boy. And what does he gain for his efforts? One lousy level. Oh, how disappointing. But fear not, folks, now he's a level 2 villager, thief, and hero. The village chief named Samara is so grateful to Kaga for saving them. He even invites Kaga to his house anytime. So, naturally, this boy decides to take him up on it and gets taken to the shed. And what does Samara show Kaga in this shed of wonders? The spoils of battle, apparently. Kaga is told that everything there belongs to him, except for the measly belongings of the two bandits the villagers defeated. Kaga spots a bandana and thinks it might be the precious thief's bandana that Hugo was wearing. Surprise, surprise, it's just a regular bandana. But fear not, the village chief assures him that he'll look into it quickly. In the meantime, Kaga gets to stay in a room prepared for him. The tired little boy decides it's time to log out. And what happens? He attempts every call that would normally end a session, but guess what? Nothing works. Panic sets in, and Kaga desperately tries to open any menu possible. But no, even shouting "let it end" doesn't do a damn thing. Reality hits him like a ton of bricks. He's stuck inside the game, unable to return to reality. And while he's busy coming to terms with his new reality, Samara kindly brings him hot water to wipe down with. The village chief even brings new clothes, because apparently Kaga's dirty ones are just too much for him to bear. But wait, Kaga, look at your hand. It's covered in the blood of the bandits you killed. Such a charming sight. And guess what? Those bandits weren't just game characters, they were actual people. And off Samara goes, leaving Kaga frozen in place. How dramatic. But don't worry, Kaga, the village chief kindly reminds you to inform him once you finish changing, because that's definitely the most pressing matter at hand. Kaga feels glad that he got to experience the joy of killing so early on. he decides to live his life in this world as if it were his true reality. And then, some time passes, and Samaro brings in the villager who swapped the bandanas. How thrilling. He asks Kaga what the man's punishment should be, as if this boy has any right to decide. Holding the precious thief's bandana in his hands, Kaga allows the village chief to proceed with their customs. But Samaro seems dismayed by this revelation. Turns out, their tradition is to turn thieves into slaves and sell them off. Half of the proceeds go to the victim, while the other half goes to the family who lost their worker. Samaro generously hands Kaga the bandits' intelligence cards. Apparently, all their bounties, if any, are now his as well. But of course, to collect them, you need to head to the night station in the town of Vale. The next morning, Kaga embarks on his journey in a carriage, generously provided with all the necessities and more. And soon enough, accompanied by Samara, he arrives in the lively town of Vale. People from all around have gathered for this market day to sell their goods. Heading to the night station, Kaga is greeted by a stunning beauty. She hands him bounties for 2 bandits, but his intelligence card is required to verify the payment. The boy hesitantly holds out his hand, unsure of what will happen. But luckily, the village chief's summoning incantation ends up opening Kaga's intelligence card. And what happens next? The cold night lady throws him his reward and goes back. Kaga decides to explore the unsafe areas of the town because that's always a brilliant idea. And what does he find there? Oh, he gets intrigued by the sudden change in atmosphere. But of course, Samara, the village chief, tells him to stay away from the brothels in those parts. But does Kaga listen? Of course not. Instead, he starts imagining all the things he could do there. But alas, his little fantasy gets interrupted by none other than Samara himself. They have arrived at the slave trader's mansion. Inside, they are greeted by the master of the house, Alan. Alan apologizes for being a bit late, claiming that he's been busy due to a newly appeared labyrinth. Kaga impresses Alan with his heroic tale of defeating the bandits alone. As a reward, he receives a whopping 30,000 nars for the slave. Samara takes the village share and bids the boy farewell. And there goes his companion, leaving poor Kaga feeling overwhelmed by the unknown. But Alan invites Kaga back for a discussion. Kaga obliges and gets taken to a room furnished with expensive things. And what does Alan discuss with our dear adventurer? Well, he questions if Kaga would be interested in buying slaves. And not just any slaves, mind you, but the good type of slaves. Oh, the temptation. But fear not, Kaga pulls himself together and understands that he must resist such the urges. Despite being enticed by the offer of buying a slave, he manages to pull himself together and resist the temptation. But oh, what do we have here? Just as he resists, he gets served tea by a voluptuous maid named Roxanne. A level 6 beast warrior, no less. Kaga, unable to contain himself, becomes captivated by her cuteness and great figure. How utterly predictable. He even goes as far as labeling her the most beautiful woman in the world. Alan, the master of the house, sees Kaga's captivation with Roxanne and takes advantage of the situation. He tries to sell Roxanne to Kaga. However, Kaga, being a thoughtful individual, has questions about the master-slave relationship. He inquires if a slave ever betrays its owner. In response, the trader reassures him, saying that a slave must follow their master even into the grave, as their entire life is tied to them. On the other hand, if a slave decides to run away, they are demoted to the status of a bandit. Alan also reveals that Roxanne is a wolfkin, which means she cannot reproduce with a human. He even remarks that she would be useful in a labyrinth, praising her intelligence. And as if that wasn't enough, Alan adds that Roxanne consents to dance at night. Finally, concluding his sales pitch, Alan asks Kaga what his move will be. The boy, despite his initial reservations, ultimately decides to buy Roxanne as he believes she would become someone else's soon anyways. Initially, Alan, the master of the house, gives a price tag of 600,000 nars for Roxanne. However, he soon lowers it to 422,800 nars. Despite the lowered price, Kaga realizes that he can't afford it and begins to be escorted out. But then, he sets his eyes on Roxanne once again. In a sudden change of heart, Alan gives Kaga 5 days to gather the necessary funds. He also informs Roxanne of the boy's likeness for her. When Roxanne greets Kaga, he becomes more determined than ever to gather the money to buy her. Kaga doesn't know where the cash will come from, but he vows to make Roxanne his in 5 days. Kaga spends some days grinding and now only needs 70,000 nars to afford Roxanne. Remembering Alan's words, he considers going to the labyrinth. In this world, adventurers explore these dangerous places and kill demons to acquire valuable items, which they can then sell for profit. For those who are confident in their abilities, labyrinths can be a guaranteed source of income. However, making large amounts of money in a short amount of time is extremely difficult. hunting bounties is also not worth the risk, as Kaga would become a target himself. After pondering it, the boy concludes that going to a labyrinth is his best option after all. Before he sets off, he uses a skill called Character Reset to temporarily hide his powerful weapon, Durandal, in order to prevent it from being stolen. Kaga doesn't want anyone to take the weapon that he has invested 63 points into. After purchasing a scimitar with an empty skill slot and some protective equipment, Kaga finally arrives at the entrance of the labyrinth. He re-equips Durandal, his powerful weapon, and bravely marches inside to the first floor of the Veil Labyrinth. Once inside, Kaga observes his job settings and realizes that he now has a new role as an explorer. In addition to being a villager, thief, and hero, being an explorer grants him unique skills and effects. He takes advantage of the item box that he has been granted as an explorer and stores his scimitar inside. As an explorer, Kaga also gains the ability called Dungeon Walk, which allows him to fast travel to limited destinations within the labyrinth. After a moment of feeling down, Kaga continues his journey and encounters a level 1 needlewood monster attacking him. However, he easily dismantles the monster without much difficulty. When the second monster arrives, Kaga decides to experiment with the hero's skill. He calls it Overwhelming. When he uses this skill, either the monster gets slowed down or Kaga himself gets faster. Either way, Kaga gains an extraordinary advantage over his foe. As Kaga swings his weapon to finish off the monster, he suddenly loses all will to do anything. However, moments later, he snaps back and cuts up the needlewood. He realizes that these moments of depression are a result of his MP going down. Luckily, Durandal's MP absorption ability restores his MP to normal, bringing him back to his senses. After this realization, Kaga decides not to rely heavily on spells and prepares to fight off the rest of the Needlewoods. After a day of slaying 21 beasts, Kaga sells the remnants of the monsters, but only receives 273 nars. Even with his 30% sell increase, it becomes apparent that monster slaying is not a practical method for Kaga to earn enough money to buy Roxanne. Undeterred, Kaga gets up early the next day and uses the bonus incantation teleport to go to the labyrinth. However, as he continues to slay the Needlewoods, his HP starts to suffer. Growing tired, Kaga comes to terms with the fact that buying Roxanne will be impossible if he continues like this. The only positive outcome is that he has managed to level up. Lying against the wall to rest, Kaga contemplates heading to a deeper level within the dungeon. One of the bricks pushes back and reveals a secret room. He sees a sparkle in the distance and wonders if he has stumbled upon a secret treasure room. However, instead of treasure, he finds a broken sword. As he approaches it, the door closes behind him, trapping him inside. To his horror, a horde of Needlewoods emerges, surrounding Kaga. He realizes that he has stumbled into a monster den. Struggling against the sheer number of beasts, Kaga becomes worried that he might die. In a desperate attempt to escape, he tries to use Dungeon Walk, but it doesn't work. Fueled with the conviction that his defeat in this reality would mean his death, Kaga charges forward like a madman, fighting against the horde of Needlewoods. Using Durandal's MP and HP absorption abilities in combination with the skill Overwhelming, Kaga manages to survive the onslaught of monsters. The will to live triumphs over the monsters, and Kaga celebrates his victory. He then exits the labyrinth, carrying the spoils of battle. As he makes his way near Vale's West Castle Gate, he notices a large commotion surrounding a dead bandit who is missing his hands. Kaga learns that these bandits, who were previously driven out of the city and killed elsewhere, have returned for revenge. Hearing people talk about bounties, Kaga realizes that there is no point in risking his life in the labyrinth if he can face danger elsewhere. Determined to get Roxanne no matter what, Kaga decides to become a bounty hunter. After deciding to become a bounty hunter, Kaga checks his job settings and realizes that he has gained 3 new jobs: Warrior, Swordsman, and Merchant. Despite their strong skills and effects, Kaga decides to keep Explorer, Hero, and Thief as his top 3 main jobs, as he believes this lineup will be the most effective for what lies ahead. The next day, Kaga goes around the city using the skill Identify to find any bandits, but he doesn't have any success. With only 3 days left to buy Roxanne, he hears rumors about the bandits being taken out one by one. These bandits had previously been driven out of the slums into the north. Wanting to see if there are any remnants of the bandits, Kaga heads in that direction. The slums where the bandits were previously driven out to are in very poor living conditions. The boy, Kaga, finds the stench alone to be sickening. Realizing that the bandits wouldn't be walking around in broad daylight, Kaga decides to head back and come back at night instead. He has made progress to the point where even using multiple teleports doesn't make him depressed anymore. As night falls, Kaga leaves the restaurant where he is staying and ventures into the city. While wandering around, he accidentally stumbles upon the red light district in all its glory. Despite the temptations surrounding him, Kaga does his best to avoid them and manages to spot a bandit in the process. Kaga follows the bandit he spotted back to the slums and discovers a group of bandits guarding a one-story house. One of the bandits mentions Hugo, the leader of the bandit group that Kaga previously defeated. Wanting to gather more information before taking action, Kaga decides to head back. The next night, Kaga follows the bandits' movements and notices that different groups avoid interacting with each other in an unusual way. He sees this as an opportunity and returns to the restaurant to strategize. The keeper at the restaurant informs him that the various bandit factions are engaged in a power struggle, causing them to kill each other. As Kaga goes to sleep, he wonders if talking to the bandits instead of directly getting involved would make things easier. However, his thoughts about Roxanne make him too nervous to get much sleep, so he decides to start his mission early. With only one day left until Kaga can buy the girl he desires, he holds the thief's bandana in his hand and attempts to sell it to the bandit guarding the headquarters in exchange for information about Hugo. Since the bandit's boss is currently asleep, he invites Kaga into his room. However, as soon as they enter the enclosed space, the bandit unexpectedly attacks Kaga and steals his scimitar. The bandit threatens to kill Kaga, who is now weaponless, but ends up getting killed himself in the process. Kaga takes the bandit's hand as proof for the bounty and silently goes around assassinating the sleeping bandits to acquire their bounties. Eventually, a noise is made, and a few bandits start to stir and move around. After being unable to obtain the left hand of a girl he killed, Kaga teleports away and decides to retreat to the labyrinth, no longer willing to take any more risks for the time being. By slaying monsters, he restores his MP to its maximum and then heads out into the forest to examine the 3 hands he brought back. As Kaga stares at the hands, he realizes the gravity of what he has just done. However, he convinces himself that since the bandits are criminals who harm people, there was no other option. Kaga understands that the bandits won't cause a commotion over their leaders being killed, as doing so would only invite attacks from other bandit factions in their moment of weakness. Afterward, Kaga ponders how he can appear unsuspicious to the knights when he cashes in the bounties, considering he had recently cashed one in. Exhausted from his thoughts, Kaga decides that he has done everything he could and goes to sleep. Finally, the long-awaited day arrives. Kaga heads to the night station and encounters a man who was present when he first cashed in a bounty. Kaga hands him the intelligence cards for the bandits and gets his own verified. He successfully obtains the bounties and celebrates, as he finally has enough money to buy Roxanne. Upon arriving at Alan's mansion, Kaga hands over the payment. Soon, Roxanne appears before him, apologizing for some reason. This worries Kaga, as he suspects that either the girl is working with the slave trader or she doesn't want to go with him. Fortunately, Roxanne was apologizing for doubting that Kaga would come for her, even though she believed in him the rest of the time. Kaga is completely shocked by her politeness and loyalty and reassures her not to worry. Finally, the contract is sealed, and Kaga officially becomes the owner of Roxanne. Kaga moves into a new room with a double bed after purchasing Roxanne. Upon seeing Roxanne's wolfkin ears, Kaga is curious and asks if he can touch them. However, he quickly regains control of his thoughts when he notices Roxanne's nervousness. Kaga mentions that he comes from a distant land and is unfamiliar with the norms of this world. He smiles gently and asks Roxanne if she can teach him about these norms. When Kaga informs Roxanne that she will be accompanying him to the battlefield, she becomes noticeably confident. Later, as Roxanne is unpacking her belongings, Kaga notices that she is barefooted. Kaga gives Roxanne the sandals he stole from the stable and she promises to cherish it as his first gift forever. The master and slave then go shopping together. During their shopping trip, they end up purchasing a set of protective equipment: olive oil, canteens, backpacks, socks, towels, fruit, cloaks, and some undergarments. After enjoying a special day together, Kaga and Roxanne return to the inn. Roxanne still feels uncomfortable sharing the bed with Kaga as a mere slave, so she decides to sit on the floor. However, Kaga pulls her close to him, insisting that there is no problem with her sleeping on the floor. Roxanne reveals that it is the norm for masters and slaves in this world. But Kaga finds this tradition cold and heartless. In a flustered state, he announces that she will sleep on the bed with him. Roxanne blushes but accepts her master's affection. Kaga pulls her closer, and then Roxanne gets up to maintain the weapons. It turns out that Roxanne is just as particular about maintaining the items as she was about picking them out. She wants to use her old clothes as rags to maintain the weapons and suggests that Kaga should go eat while she does so. However, Kaga insists that they go out to eat together. When Roxanne hears this, she starts removing her clothes. Kaga tries to be considerate and looks away, although he can't help but sneak some looks at Roxanne. He notices that she has a tail, and he vows to touch it at some point. Roxanne continues with the maintenance using the olive oil they brought earlier. Eventually, it's time for them to take a bath. With his heart pounding, Kaga asks Roxanne to scrub his back. After she does as told, Kaga tells Roxanne that it's now her turn. After washing each other's heads, the night becomes filled with passion. The next morning, Kaga wakes up beside the girl. As soon as he wakes up, Roxanne kisses him. It seems that Kaga had instructed her to do so before bed every night, and after waking up every morning. And he feels fortunate that his luck is finally changing in this life. Even though he doesn't want to get out of bed, Kaga starts to move and announces that it's time to head to the labyrinth. As Kaga prepares his gear, he asks Roxanne about adding skills to equipment. Roxanne explains that this can be done using skill crystals, which are the accumulation of monsters' skills. These rare items can be merged with equipment by a blacksmith. However, Kaga wonders if he will need to acquire the blacksmith job. But Roxanne informs him that it is a job exclusive to dwarves. She doesn't recommend it either because there is a chance that the fusion process will fail, and dwarves generally dislike direct transactions. Even finding a dwarf who is willing to accept the job doesn't guarantee their trustworthiness. Some dwarves have managed to make a fortune by pretending that the fusion process has failed. They then sell the equipment infused with skills at a higher price later on. Roxanne mentions that things would be different if the blacksmith was on friendly terms with Kaga, implying that there could be advantages. Upon hearing this, Kaga suggests adding a blacksmith to his party, which makes Roxanne flinch. Kaga notices her reaction and quickly changes the topic, giving her leather armor as a gift. Since the armor emphasizes her figure a bit too much, Roxanne decides to wear a jacket that is more suitable for women. After getting ready, the duo heads out. Using teleportation, Kaga takes Roxanne directly to the labyrinth, saving them from traveling a long distance. Roxanne is impressed with her master's skills and begins using her sharp sense of smell to track down prey. As a wolfkin, her sense of smell is even sharper than usual. Roxanne offers to lead Kaga directly to the monsters. When Kaga agrees, Roxanne asks if he can lend her a magic crystal. Monsters are composed of magic power, and when they are defeated, their magic power gradually accumulates and forms a magic crystal. Guild temples use these magic crystals as energy sources. Confused, Kaga asks why Roxanne needs a magic crystal. She explains that without a magic crystal, all the magic power from the defeated monsters would go to waste. Additionally, magic crystals are the most valuable items that can be acquired in labyrinths. Kaga realizes that he has been making mistakes all this time, and he is comforted by the girl. How touching. Deciding to buy something later, he confidently marches towards the monster that Roxanne smelled out earlier and defeats it in one blow. Impressive. They continue to explore the labyrinth, and Kaga notices that the wolfkin's tail starts wagging voluntarily. He's glad that she is enjoying their adventure together. After some time, the duo returns to the inn after a successful day. They have acquired bags upon bags of remnants from the Needle Woods. Kaga's strength, combined with Roxanne's ability to spot monsters, proves to be an impeccable combination. As the boy expresses his gratitude to the girl for her services, she becomes emotional. How heartwarming. Roxanne, the poor little newcomer, was treated like a complete joke at her last party. It's no surprise really, because who would take her seriously? They probably just wanted her to stay out of the way, watching the battles like a spectator or sneaking around attacking from behind. But lo and behold, Kaga comes along and decides to treat her differently. How noble of him. And he even invites her to sit closely with him on the bed, as if that's some kind of special privilege. I'm sure that made her feel oh so important. And then, as if it couldn't get any weirder, he asks if he can touch her ears. What a weirdo. And of course, he needs to know if there's any food from his precious little world around, because apparently he can't survive without it. Pathetic. And just to top it all off, he mentions wanting to add more members to the party to make them stronger. How thoughtful of him to include Roxanne in his grand plan. Roxanne, the ever-accommodating girl, has no problems with it when the boy concludes that she is open to him having a harem. How generous of her to allow him to entertain such fantasies. And then what does our dear Kaga do? He goes out and buys not just one, but 2 black magic crystals. I guess he needs all the help he can get to compensate for his lack of skill or talent. These crystals apparently change color after killing a certain number of monsters, red after 10, purple after 100. It's like a little game for him, isn't it? How exciting. But wait, there's more. He wonders if there's a limit to the crystal's colors, and gets told that they turn white after 1 million kills. 1 million. Can you imagine? I guess some people settle for a measly 10,000 green or 100,000 blue. I suppose Kaga fancies himself a real overachiever. So they head back to the labyrinth and, surprise, Kaga easily blasts through every foe. How impressive. And what does Roxanne do? She suggests going up to the next floor. Of course, she has to confuse the poor boy who thought they would go down. Silly Kaga, always getting things wrong. And then she drops the bombshell that labyrinths are apparently living creatures that lure people in and eat their bodies. Kaga, the brilliant mind that he is, inquires about how one can kill a labyrinth. I mean, who wouldn't want to know how to destroy something that's supposedly alive and eats people, right? According to Roxanne, the only way to accomplish this feat is by defeating the boss on every level and reaching the highest level. Simple enough, isn't it? But no, Kaga wants to take it a step further. He wants to acquire a method for beating multiple enemies at once, because defeating them one by one is just too much work for him. So he decides to try casting spells to get the mage job. What a genius idea. But oh, poor Kaga, he can't cast the spells because he doesn't have enough mana. How unfortunate. But fear not, because during this time of failure, he notices a bonus skill called Crystallization Upgrade. How intriguing. He wonders if it has something to do with those precious magic crystals of his. Lo and behold, defeating a measly 30 monsters instead of 100 actually makes his magic crystal turn purple. Wow, what an accomplishment. And then, just to top it all off, Kaga has the audacity to ask Roxanne if she can use any healing. I guess he's too weak and incompetent to take care of himself. Roxanne, being the knowledgeable one, tells Kaga that only the monk and priest jobs can use healing spells. How convenient. But to obtain those jobs, one must defeat monsters with their bare hands. Can you believe it? So, of course, Kaga, ever the obedient one, tells Roxanne to fight barehanded from now on. How delightful. But oh, surprise, he soon realizes that fighting like that isn't enough. So he reluctantly puts away his precious Durandal, the weapon that could one-shot enemies. Instead, he brings out the Fragaretch sword, because apparently, he only wants to damage the foes now. How considerate of him. And much to his amazement, Roxanne turns out to be surprisingly adept at close quarter combat. Wow, isn't she just the epitome of skill? She even lands the finishing blow on a monster and obtains the monk job. Bravo. But let's not forget about Kaga, who accidentally kills a series of monsters with his sword. Finally, he manages to manipulate his points successfully and becomes a monk as well. What a glorious moment. And of course, after a hard day's work, they return to the inn where the master and slave praise each other for their job well done. How lovely. And just when you thought the night couldn't get any more exciting, they engage in passionate intimacy once again. Oh, how romantic. And the next day, they finally arrive before the boss room of the labyrinth's first floor. Kaga and Roxanne find themselves in the waiting room for the boss, only to be informed by Roxanne that only one party can enter the boss room at a time. Isn't that just fantastic? If 2 parties try to go in together, the boss simply wouldn't appear and the door to the next floor won't open. So, in such a scenario, one of the parties must retreat. How thrilling. And of course, Roxanne, with her ever-excited sparkle in her eyes, inquires if they should go now. Oh, what a joyous occasion. She even mentions that sometimes there's equipment left behind if the previous party has been wiped out. How lucky they must be to potentially get their hands on some leftovers. It's truly impressive how nonchalant she is about it all. So, they venture deeper into the boss room, only to encounter a giant wooden monster called the Ood Wood. Roxanne and Kaga unleash their attacks, but it seems that their efforts have little impact on the beast. Even the supposedly mighty Durandal fails to finish it off in one blow. How disappointing. But let's not lose hope, shall we? After all, Ood Wood is just the boss of the first floor. So, with Roxanne's continuous assistance and a few clean strikes, Kaga finally manages to slash apart the monster. Hooray for them, I suppose. Afterwards, Kaga, being the observant one, notices that Roxanne doesn't seem to realize how impressive her movements were during the battle. How oblivious. Meanwhile, Roxanne decides to pick up a leaf off the ground. Because that's what you do after defeating a boss, right? And what does Kaga do? Oh, he opens her job settings, because that's completely normal behavior. And what does he find? He spots a skill named Beast Attack and sees that she now has a new job called Herbalist. How fascinating. Apparently, people with these jobs use special leaves to make medicines, while beast attack is the skill that those glorious beast warriors use to inflict massive damage on monsters. It turns out that Roxanne can't use the beast attack skill. Such a shame. You see, using skills typically requires one to say the appropriate incantation with perfect pronunciation, accent, and minor nuances. And despite knowing the incantation itself, Roxanne just isn't able to use it. How disappointing. On the other hand, all of Kaga's incantations are either shortened or abbreviated, making this whole skill thing completely unrelatable to him. How convenient for him, I suppose. Anyway, the duo decides to go through the portal in front of them and arrives at the second floor of the Veil Labyrinth. Surprise, surprise, the appearance of the floor is exactly the same as the first one. How thrilling. Kaga ponders if they can go back to fight the first boss, but Roxanne reveals that it's always possible. So, the brilliant boy decides to head back to pick up the leaf that gave Roxanne her precious herbalist job. What a genius plan. But of course, going back through the portal brings Kaga out of the labyrinth. Kaga, in his infinite wisdom, now understands that arriving directly to the boss room like he initially thought isn't possible. How enlightening. But he's worried that Roxanne might lose respect for him as her master if she found out that he didn't know about it before. How precious. So, what does our clever protagonist do? He pretends that it was all a big experiment that yielded intriguing results. How utterly ingenious. And wouldn't you know it, Roxanne buys into his little charade. How gullible. With his bluff successfully executed, Kaga makes his way back to the boss waiting room on the first floor. And lo and behold, he beats the boss, picks up the leaf, and becomes an herbalist. Bravo, Kaga. Now he can create medicinal antidote pills. How useful. And when he inquires about their purpose, Roxanne informs him that there are quite a few poisonous monsters out there. Kaga can't believe that no one bothered to tell him about the existence of those medicinal antidote pills before. How utterly shocking. So, being the cautious one, he decides to buy some other pills just in case. But to his dismay, the shopkeeper there never grants him the 30% discount that his bonus skill supposedly grants him. How unfair. It seems that Kaga soon realizes that skills related to haggling actually rely on the calc skill, which belongs to the merchant class. How enlightening. Anyway, with plenty of daylight still left, Kaga heads back to the labyrinth's second floor. Oh, how adventurous. And what does he encounter there? Two monsters at the same time. How exciting. One is a level 2 needlewood, and the other is a level 2 green caterpillar. But fear not, because our brave hero easily beats these insignificant creatures. Wow, what a feat. And in his infinite wisdom, Kaga decides to ask Roxanne if the same number of monsters show up as the floor number, because, you know, he can't possibly figure that out on his own. Roxanne clarifies that the monster count doesn't increase in a linear fashion with the floor number. Instead, it increases with every twofold increment in floors. So, it goes like this: 1 monster on the first floor, 2 monsters on the second floor, 3 monsters on the fourth floor, 4 monsters on the 8th floor, and so on. How fascinating. And wouldn't you know it, the next swarm they encounter consists of 2 green caterpillars. Oh, what trouble they cause for poor Kaga, enveloping him in their magical threads. How delightful. But fear not, because with Roxanne's assistance, he eventually manages to overcome this obstacle. What a triumph. Later on, as Kaga and Roxanne stroll through the Veil Plaza, Kaga ponders about acquiring multi-target spells. How ambitious of him. And wouldn't you know it, right at that moment, they come across a level 3 bandit ogling the slave trading house where Roxanne came from. Kaga decides to set up a meeting with Alan to discuss the situation. And much to his surprise, the slave trader reveals that it might have something to do with the man Kaga brought from the village. How mysterious. Apparently, a day before, this man was sold to a group of 3 individuals. They even asked for some time to prepare and announced that they would come back the next day. But here's the interesting part. One of the men was suspiciously talking to the slave about the thief's bandana. How peculiar. Apparently, this bandana isn't of interest to ordinary people. How fascinating. So, naturally, Kaga starts to think that the villager has some prior connections with the bandits. And what does he do? He inquires about the whereabouts of this villager and gets told that he is in an unlocked room at the buyer's request. Oh, the suspense. But despite the risk of an all-out bandit attack, Alan remains unfazed. Alan, the brave slave trader, announces that he has no intention of losing to mere bandits. How courageous. He assures Kaga not to worry, as he also has combat slaves. How reassuring. Upon hearing this, Kaga gets up and whispers to Roxanne that they should leave now. To him, their job was to warn Alan, and the bandit situation is now his problem. How convenient. However, it seems that Roxanne is worried. Despite being a slave, the trade house has taken good care of her, especially one kind old woman who has been particularly nice to her throughout her stay. How touching. Seeing Roxanne's concerns, Kaga promptly sits right back down and asks Alan if he would like to hire him. How considerate. The boy feigns feeling bad about a slave he brought causing problems, even though his true intention is just to test something out. Roxanne appreciates Kaga's generous gesture, and it seems that Alan decides to hire him after all. How delightful. As the two of them head to the lookout, Roxanne starts feeling bad for being selfish back there, but Kaga reassures her that it isn't a problem. How understanding. He remarks that she should just be careful in the future, and he expresses that her concerns are his concerns as well. How sweet. Then, at night, Kaga wakes up to the surprise of Roxanne kissing him. How unexpected. The duo then meets up with Alan and his combat slaves, and the group awaits the bandits' next move. Alan gathers all the non-combatants onto the second floor and asks Kaga to look after them. He remarks that he can't expose his precious customers to too much danger. How considerate. The brave slave trader takes his combat slaves to intercept the bandits' attack, while Kaga and Roxanne stay behind as guards. How noble. And before they know it, the battle begins. As Kaga stands on the lookout, he spots the level 3 bandit they previously saw ogling the trade house running towards one of the rooms. How exciting. And what does our brave protagonist do? He realizes that this is his golden opportunity to acquire the mage job. How ambitious. So, he tells Roxanne to stay behind and moves out. How daring. Previously, he had tried to cast Meteor Crash, Gamma Ray Burst, and Extreme Drop Dead out of his bonus skills. It appears that none of the previous spells Kaga tried to cast worked because he didn't have enough MP. How unfortunate. But fear not, because there are 2 incantations that he still hasn't tested, Self-Destruct and Equivalent Exchange. However, there was no way he was going to cast the former one, so it was time to try out the latter. This skill consumes both MP and HP to extinguish the foe's HP. How intriguing. As soon as Kaga casts the spell, a series of loud thuds sound out, and he falls to the ground. How dramatic. The feeling of depression overcomes him, indicating that the incantation was successful, but cost him a significant amount of MP. How costly. Just then, Roxanne arrives, followed by Alan. The slave trader reveals that a bandit escaped in this direction, and he looks around, spotting a puddle of blood with bits of flesh. How gruesome. However, Alan chalks it up to the bandit having a self-destruct orb item, rather than suspecting Kaga. Upon seeing the sight of the puddle of blood, Kaga gets alerted, realizing that it could have been him if he had run out of HP first. How chilling. Afterwards, he receives the reward from Alan and heads off to the labyrinth to recover his lost MP. But all the while, Roxanne worries about his condition. How caring. Soon enough, Kaga fully recovers using Durandal's MP absorption and opens his job settings. How exciting. And what does he do? He insists on using Equivalent Exchange, and his persistence pays off as he obtains the mage job. How impressive. As he sees novice-level spells for fire, water, air, and earth get unlocked, he turns to Roxanne and asks her what type of spells mages usually cast. How curious. And what does the knowledgeable Wolfkin reveal? She tells him that mages typically cast spells of 3 types, ones that damage all targets, ones that create walls, and ones that fire orbs. After shocking Roxanne with his newly acquired power, Kaga begins his testing of various types of fire spells on the first floor and then moves on to the second floor. How exciting. Through experimentation, he manages to figure out the forms of the different elemental spells. How impressive. The ball spell produces a single target attack, the wall spell creates a defensive barrier, and the storm spell is a multi-target attack. How intriguing. And when combined with each elemental type, fire, water, breeze, and sand, they produce their respective magic. How magical. Now that he has finally obtained the mage class, Kaga wants to switch primarily to magic and combat to protect Roxanne, rather than relying on Durandal. How noble. To achieve this goal, he plans to farm experience so that they can raise their levels and reduce the risk of anything going wrong. How strategic. However, the switch to using magic proves to be inconvenient for Kaga at first, as his spells aren't yet powerful enough. How disappointing. He expresses this to Roxanne, who informs him that a mage usually carries a staff. How informative. Kaga remarks that it will be a while before the next market day, but Roxanne has a solution. She tells him about a permanent shop in Quater that serves explorers, and there is a large labyrinth there as well. How convenient. Intrigued by this information, Kaga decides that it may be worth checking out and adds it to his bucket list. How adventurous. Soon enough, the duo arrives at the boss room of the Veil Labyrinth's second floor. And what do they find? A gigantic bug. How repulsive. Regardless of his disgust, Kaga easily eradicates the boss with Roxanne's help. The duo continues their adventure and marches onto the third floor of the labyrinth. And what do they stumble upon? A level 3 kobold, a knife-wielding mini-goblin known for its close-range combat skills. How fascinating. Taking advantage of this knowledge, Kaga swiftly uses his fireball to one-shot the little creature. How impressive. After killing a bunch of kobolds, Kaga decides to head back, as he has already reached level 20. How efficient. He sells the spoils for the day and comes across a lady selling an instant one-way trip to the Imperial City. According to Roxanne, it is quite close to Quater. Excited by this opportunity, Kaga decides to make the journey and informs Roxanne of his plan. However, since the cost for travel is per person, Roxanne willingly stays back in the city. Since Kaga can teleport to and from Veil anytime once he reaches Quater, he decides to head out alone. How brave. Upon arriving at the Imperial City, he is in awe of the sheer size of its adventurers guild, which is much larger than Veil. How impressive. He quickly pulls himself together and wastes no time. Kaga asks the lady who brought him here if she can go to Quater, and he gets lucky. How fortunate. Reaching Quater, he notices that the Adventurers Guild there is much smaller compared to the previous cities. How interesting. Kaga then uses teleport to head back for Roxanne, who warmly welcomes him back. How heartwarming. At this point, the boy has greatly expended his MP and falls into Roxanne's arms. Since Kaga is exhausted, the two of them decide to head back to the inn for the day. How sensible. As the night fades into their usual intimacy, Kaga becomes determined to buy a house, no longer wanting Roxanne to have to put up with living in taverns. How thoughtful. The next day, Kaga and Roxanne walk through the streets of Quater. As they approach the labyrinth, Kaga notices the adventurers heading inside and doing something before entering. Intrigued, he asks Roxanne what they are doing. Roxanne reveals that people wanting to enter the labyrinth must pay an entry fee first. Annoyed by this, Kaga can't believe that he will have to make a payment every time he wants to enter. Suddenly, Roxanne pulls him closer and whispers something to him. She wonders if they can enter the labyrinth without having to pay by using Kaga's teleportation magic. How clever she is. Kaga praises her for being a smart girl. Before entering the Quater labyrinth, Kaga finally acquires the wooden staff that he has been wanting for a while. How exciting. Afterwards, he and Roxanne head to the town outskirts in search of a suitable residence. How thoughtful. The town isn't too big, but it is nice and quaint, with a decent shopping district. After careful consideration, Kaga decides to settle in Quater's outskirts. How practical. Returning to the shopkeeper who gave him directions to the weapon shop, Kaga asks if anyone can live in the town. And what does the lady say? She confirms that anyone can live there, as long as their intelligence cards are verified. There are no other restrictions. In Quater, it is considered taboo to look into someone's past, as people from various backgrounds become explorers. How intriguing. With the expert guidance of the shopkeeper, Kaga and Roxanne are able to locate and secure a spacious house in close proximity to the labyrinth. How convenient. Although they encounter a few quirks, such as a neglected garden and an unauthorized stone room left behind by the previous tenant, Kaga manages to negotiate a discounted rent, thanks to Roxanne. However, he secretly knows that the discount is actually due to his 30% off skill. How clever. After settling into their new home, the duo ventures to the Veil Labyrinth. Kaga wields his newly acquired staff and faces off against a level 3 green caterpillar. On the second floor of the labyrinth, a lower level version of the same creature took 4 shots to be finished off. However, with the wooden staff, the higher level iteration only takes 4 shots to finish off. How impressive. Having completed his test, Kaga heads back to the Veil Inn for one last night, feeling nostalgic over all the memories he made there. How sentimental. As Roxanne arrives to accompany him, the two recreate the very first night they spent together, full of passion, intimacy, and warmth. How romantic. Their last physical experience in the inn couldn't be better. In the morning, Roxanne sits beside Kaga, reminiscing on how he took care of her first. With a smile on her face, she assures her master that he will take care of her plenty more times in the future. Feeling overwhelmed by Roxanne's words, Kaga realizes that she has helped him grow as a person. How touching. After bidding farewell to the innkeeper, Kaga and Roxanne arrive at their new home. While Roxanne takes charge of setting up their living space, Kaga sets off to explore the labyrinth within Quater. As he looks around, he discovers that the knights in Quater are purely business-minded and even sell maps of the labyrinths. How convenient. Kaga pays his entry fee and enters the labyrinth for the first time. Despite having a similar structure to the Veil Labyrinth, the Quater Labyrinth is much more crowded and different in many ways. After finding an area without any parties around, Kaga places his teleport and heads back to his house, ensuring that there won't be any need for an entry fee in the future. How clever. As Kaga arrives home, Roxanne greets him with a warm welcome back, master. How heartwarming. Hearing her words, Kaga gets excited and starts touching up Roxanne. But their intimate moment is interrupted by a loud knock. However, the silver lining is that it's the delivery for the furniture they ordered. How convenient. When asked if he wants the items delivered to his room, Kaga declines, not wanting a stranger to come all the way into his house. He wants to avoid any potential trouble in case someone other than himself can use teleport. Nevertheless, with their furniture finally delivered and their home taking shape, Kaga and Roxanne joyfully share their inaugural night together in their new dwelling. Once again waking up to Roxanne's kisses, Kaga embraces the new morning. How romantic. Sometime later, the duo sneaks into the Quater Labyrinth. To Kaga's surprise, despite the labyrinth's overcrowding, no individual has ever managed to conquer the entire maze. How challenging. The highest floor reached so far is the 91st, leaving Kaga somewhat disheartened as they still have a long way to go. Nevertheless, the duo manages to enter the boss room of the first floor, despite the long line of explorers waiting their turn. How impressive. Suddenly, the boss, a kobold warrior, appears. Despite its somewhat intimidating aura, the kobold warrior turns out to be ridiculously weak and is easily defeated. How anticlimactic. As they reach the second floor, Roxanne informs Kaga that the monsters here are also weak kobolds. Feeling disappointed, Kaga decides to head back for the day, thinking it's not worth their time. However, to counteract his despondency, they embark on the project of rejuvenating the abandoned garden and go to the shopkeeper lady to buy herb seeds. After purchasing the necessary tools and seeds, the duo works together immensely and completely transforms the ugly yard into a marvelous vegetable garden. How impressive. Afterwards, Kaga looks around for a laundry tub as per Roxanne's request. While searching for a laundry tub, Kaga has an epiphany. He realizes that an extra large tub could be transformed into an indoor bath within the stone chamber, and he envisions sharing this concept with Roxanne. How thoughtful. Kaga commits to the idea and buys the tub for 2,000 nars. How convenient. Sometime later, the duo continues to explore the labyrinth and ascend through its floors. As they go about their lives, they strike a perfect balance between exploring, socializing, and having fun. How delightful. However, as time goes on, the challenges in the labyrinth escalate, and they face increasingly formidable boss monsters. Faced with these foes, Kaga realizes that he has become unafraid of monsters in this world not because he has gotten used to them, but for some other reason. It seems that Kaga realizes that he has become unafraid of monsters in this world because of Roxanne. Not only does she fight without fear, but she also finds happiness in doing so. However, this realization leads to an opponent named Beep Sheep who possesses a unique magical ability that puts people to sleep. Unfortunately, Kaga falls victim to the spell and Roxanne gets hurt by a series of blows. This infuriates Kaga, and he goes all out in his attack. With immense speed, he uses the Durandal to wreak havoc, switching between swordsmanship and casting healing spells to rejuvenate Roxanne and eradicate the Beep Sheep, bringing her back to full health. Despite managing to overcome the obstacle, this encounter prompts Kaga to realize his inadvertent complacency, which endangered both himself and Roxanne. How concerning. Deciding that they have explored enough for one day, the duo heads back home. Afterwards, the large bathtub that Kaga had ordered finally arrives. How convenient. Grasping this moment, Kaga seizes the opportunity to introduce Roxanne to the concept of bathing, leading to a deeply intimate moment between them. How romantic. Enhanced by Kaga's innovative creation of soap, their intimacy takes on an exhilarating dimension. As Roxanne drifts into slumber, Kaga grapples with guilt stemming from Roxanne's injury inflicted by the last boss monster. He resolves that including another warrior in their party is essential to bolster their defenses, without delay. Kaga decides to wander around some stupid labyrinth filled with rabbit monsters. Can you believe it? Rabbit monsters. Anyway, he kills these pathetic creatures and takes their pelts because apparently, some idiot clothing stores are willing to pay a decent amount for them. I mean, who would even want to wear rabbit pelts? It's so low level and ridiculous. But wait, it gets even more exciting. While roaming around, Kaga and his companion, Roxanne, stumble upon a treasure chest. Wow, how utterly unexpected. I'm on the edge of my seat. And then, after all this mind-numbing exploration, they finally reach the boss room on the 7th floor. And guess what? They have the pleasure of facing off against the Rapid Rabbit. Such a creative name, don't you think? Well, this so-called boss doesn't stand a chance against Kaga and his oh-so-powerful overwhelming move. What a surprise, right? And guess what? After defeating this underwhelming boss, they find out it drops high-quality meat as loot. Roxanne, the great culinary genius, works her magic and turns that measly meat into what they call schema roast. So, after indulging in this supposedly marvelous taste, Kaga, in his infinite wisdom, decides that it's a brilliant idea to challenge the Rapid Rabbit once again. But hold on to your seat, because here comes the unexpected twist that you've been waiting for. As they trudge through the labyrinth, they stumble upon another sorry excuse for an adventurer. This guy has been meticulously preparing to face off against the Rapid Rabbit for several years. And get this lonely adventurer actually believes that defeating the Rapid Rabbit will somehow grant him a party member. Talk about delusions of grandeur. I mean, seriously, is he that desperate for companionship? So, the moment finally arrives for this clueless adventurer to make his move. He marches into the boss room, foolishly thinking that his luck has finally turned around. Oh, the sweet taste of naivety. And of course, because Kaga is such a saint, he sees this sorry excuse for an adventurer all alone and decides to empathize with him. Kaga, the self-obsessed fool, sees himself in the labyrinth veteran because apparently, they both enjoy wallowing in their own self-pity. Big surprise. Moving on, Kaga and Roxanne enter the boss room like they think they're so important. And what do they find? Oh, how mysterious, the Rapid Rabbit is already waiting for them. Wow, groundbreaking stuff. Kaga, in his infinite wisdom, decides to use his precious overwhelming move to finish off the boss, as if he's some kind of hero. But guess what? The boss goes down without any problem, just like every other boss they've faced. Shocking, I know. And now, the brilliant Kaga is left scratching his head, wondering what made this encounter so special. Maybe he should invest in some brain cells and figure it out himself. Kaga, the great observer, spots some equipment in the distance that was left behind by the previous party. How careless of them. And then, like a bolt of lightning, it hits Kaga. The equipment actually belongs to the poor sap of a solo adventurer who went in before them. How tragic. It seems that the mighty Rapid Rabbit was too much for this experienced adventurer, leading to his inevitable demise. And of course, witnessing this event has a profound impact on our dear Kaga. He's left grappling with the unsettling truth that adventurers often meet their untimely end within the treacherous confines of this labyrinth. I guess Kaga thought he was invincible or something. But wait, it gets even more dramatic. The realization dawns upon him that he and Roxanne are not immune to this fate. Gasp. Can you believe it? They might actually face danger and potentially die. What a shocker. I'm sure this thought keeps Kaga up at night, pondering his own mortality. And in his overwhelmed state, Kaga seeks solace in Roxanne's comforting presence. Kaga, the eternal thinker, can't seem to catch a break even when the girl he's with is fast asleep. He stays awake, pondering the deeper meaning of it all. Is it even worth crossing those rickety bridges that the labyrinths have to offer? In his existential crisis, the boy questions why he's even embarking on this uncertain journey in the first place. I guess he's finally realizing the absurdity of it all. But wait, just as Kaga is spiraling into the depths of despair, Roxanne wakes up. Oh, how convenient. Worried for her so-called master, she once again provides him with comfort, nestling him in her warm bosom. Because apparently, that's all it takes to solve the existential crisis of a lost boy. The next morning, Kaga wakes up next to Roxanne, feeling oh so determined to overcome his lingering sense of despair. Our brave Kaga, facing off against the monsters of the labyrinth, resolves to overcome his emotional hurdles. In his pursuit of this lofty goal, he vows to become stronger, and then the dynamic duo sells the valuable rabbit pelts they've gathered. And what does our love-struck hero do with the proceeds? He decides to purchase 2 exquisite silk camisoles for Roxanne. And wouldn't you know it, she appreciates the gesture and promises to wear one of the camisoles for Kaga at night. Sometime later, our brave Kaga decides to face off against not 1, not 2, but 3 level 7 monsters on the 7th floor. But oh, what's this? His mind is distracted by the thought of Roxanne and that silk camisole he bought her. How utterly predictable. And of course, because of this distraction, the encounter takes a dangerous turn for our brilliant boy. In comes the mighty Paunch, a bull-like monster charging at Kaga and injuring his precious little finger. How tragic. But fear not, for our hero's magical abilities allow him to swiftly recover. And just when you thought things couldn't get any more interesting, Kaga and Roxanne share an intimate moment while bathing. How scandalous. And what do you know? The boy takes this opportunity to introduce the girl to the concept of oral pleasure. And to top it all off, Roxanne wears the silk camisole at night. Kaga, the master of observation, sees Roxanne's beauty in that silk camisole and feels glad that he bought it. I'm sure their fashion choices are of utmost importance in their perilous journey. But wait, the following day brings a long-awaited breakthrough for our dynamic duo. Finally, their efforts pay off. They struggle a bit against a group of beasts, but lo and behold, a monster drops a coveted skill stone as loot. This particular stone is apparently highly sought after by those mighty dwarven blacksmiths. It enables them to imbue equipment with magical skills. But of course, even with this great progress, Kaga can't help but worry. Oh, how surprising, since they'll soon be arriving on the 8th floor, where the number of monsters will once again increase. Our dear boy feels the need to seriously expand his party. With the skill stone in his hands, Kaga ponders the whereabouts of a blacksmith. Along with Roxanne, he has a delightful dinner, because, you know, nothing says romance like discussing your impending demise over a nice meal. And then Kaga drops a bomb on the poor girl. In light of his recent encounters and experiences, Kaga has made the oh-so-somber decision to draft his final will and testament. I'm sure that's the dinner conversation everyone dreams of. But wait, there's more. He stipulates that upon his eventual demise, Roxanne should be granted her freedom. How generous. I guess he finally realizes that she deserves better than him. But, oh, what's this? Roxanne declines this oh-so-generous arrangement. How selfless. She views Kaga's death as a personal failing and expresses a desire to share the same fate if such a thing were to happen. Upon hearing these words, our dear Kaga finally acknowledges Roxanne's feelings and declares that it's time to expand his party. And so, he sets off on a quest to find a new member, paying a visit to none other than Alan. His goal: to acquire a dwarf slave with expertise in blacksmithing. But alas, poor Alan only possesses a single dwarf slave named Sherry. She may be the same age as Roxanne, but she lacks the skills in blacksmithing and combat that Kaga requires. But don't worry, because Sherry is described as a short, slender, and cute girl. And not only that, she seems to be fairly mature as well. And to add to the drama, the girl reveals that she possesses an explorer level of 10, which is typically a prerequisite for obtaining the blacksmith skill. However, it seems that the skill never manifested for her. He questions what abstract and difficult conditions would be needed for a blacksmith job to manifest in a dwarf. He realizes that it would be a waste to turn Sherry away just because she's not a blacksmith. Despite her shortcomings, Sherry earnestly requests Kaga to purchase her. I'm sure she sees the potential in joining their party, even without being a blacksmith. And as Alan and Sherry step out of the room for a moment, Roxanne astutely observes a physical trait of Sherry's: her small ears. Usually, these small ears indicate advanced age among dwarves. But fear not, for Alan clarifies that this is actually a congenital condition and confirms that Sherry's true age is still the same as Roxanne, at 16. The slave trader pushes for Sherry, using the same characteristics as a talking point, just like he did with the Wolfkin. But fear not, for our clever Kaga ends up haggling the price down from 300,000 nars to 177,800 nars. I'm sure he's quite proud of his negotiation skills. With Roxanne's approval, the boy finally acquires Sherry. However, he remains uncertain about her clouded reaction for a split second. Is it jealousy or something else entirely? After the deal is made, Roxanne introduces herself to Sherry as the #1 slave. And so, with the newly acquired dwarf in tow, Kaga adds her to his party and devises a plan for Sherry to engage in skill experimentation. They accompany Kaga as they move around the town. During their tour, Sherry expresses astonishment at Kaga's magical abilities, particularly his teleport spell. Upon arriving at Kaga's house, Roxanne informs Sherry that she can sit and eat dinner together with him. As they sit down, Sherry mentions Kaga's multiple jobs. Curious, Kaga inquires if Sherry knows anyone else with multiple jobs, to which she replies that it's only from myths about gods. But wait, there's more. The boy reveals that he aims to unlock Sherry's latent blacksmith skill. And to kickstart this journey, Kaga equips Sherry with a hammer or maul as her weapon, fitting for a future blacksmith. Getting talked to with such kindness, Sherry finds Kaga's equitable treatment of slaves astonishing. It seems that treating slaves as equals, rather than mere property, is not the norm in their world. But it is a welcome change, regardless. Sherry opts for a wooden club as her weapon, and Kaga can't help but notice her immense strength as she swings around the heavy weapon effortlessly. In a thoughtful gesture, Kaga gifts Roxanne new leather shoes and passes down his stolen sandals to Sherry. And to add to the fashion exchange, the dwarf also receives the leather jacket that Roxanne couldn't wear due to her voluptuous figure. Later, during a conversation with Sherry, Kaga discovers an interesting fact. Skill crystals can only be combined with equipment if their skill slots are empty. But here's the catch. No one, until now, has been able to see these skill slots, except for Kaga, of course. And so, after these interactions, the group sets off to explore the labyrinth. Prepared to show off his marvelous sword skills, Kaga boastfully kills the monsters. But it seems that Sherry, the dwarf, is more impressed with Roxanne's magnificent evasions of the attacks. As they head home, Sherry discovers that Kaga can use spells without incantations and is currently at level 33. How astonishing. Roxanne is equally surprised by this feat, considering that not too long ago, Kaga was only at level 20. But there is an explanation. Kaga gains experience points 100 points faster than others. Later, the three of them gather to eat dinner together. But even at this moment, Sherry is still unable to believe that she can partake in such a simple pleasure, considering that she is just a mere slave. Roxanne invites Sherry to sit beside her, and Kaga takes on the role of serving. However, he nearly serves Sherry first, which earns him a disapproving glare from Roxanne. How tense, but a chill down his spine prompts Kaga to hastily serve Roxanne first. A wise decision indeed. During the dinner discussion, Kaga makes an astonishing discovery. He learns that there is a job exclusive to humans as well. How intriguing. In contrast to the dwarf's specific job of blacksmith, the only title exclusive to their species is sex maniac. How outrageous. And in response, Kaga shouts, "What's wrong with humans?" How amusing. Instead of shying away from his human side, Kaga fully embraces it and invites the girls for a bath. How bold. Later, during their bathing routine, Roxanne teaches Sherry a unique technique involving to cleanse Kaga's body. How unconventional. With both girls on each side of him, Kaga feels blissful. How fortunate for him. As night falls, Kaga once again makes a blunder by inadvertently kissing Sherry before Roxanne. How embarrassing. Met with a chilling stare from Roxanne, he swiftly justifies the order by making up a best for last reason, which Roxanne accepts. How clever. Incorporating the lessons learned, Kaga starts an intimate session with Roxanne. How intimate. Kaga also makes sure Sherry is feeling comfortable and guiding this dwarf through the moment. But wait, it gets even better. Roxanne decides to jump in on the action, and suddenly this whole thing turns into some massive experience. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more absurd, as dawn breaks, Kaga wakes up to the amazing realization that he's been given the oh-so-prestigious job title of Clap Maniac. Classy, I know, but hey, the boy actually enjoys the effects of this ridiculous job. It supposedly boosts his stamina, intelligence, and magical prowess. And get this, it even comes with a special skill called abstinence attack. So, Kaga, in all his wisdom, decides to embrace this new aspect of himself. He gathers his little posse of slaves and boldly declares his intention to establish a harem. And wouldn't you know it, Kaga manages to acquire not just one, not two, but 3 more companions to add to his little collection. We've got Miria the cat, Vesta the dragonkin, and Rutina the elf. So, fast forward 10 years from when Kaga first graced this world with his presence. Kaga returns to the starting point, surrounded by 5 beautiful ladies of different species. And what do they have the audacity to do? They have the nerve to ask him what the heck they're all doing in some boring, run-of-the-mill farming village. He tells them that it's a place he visited a long time ago, before meeting Roxanne. Kaga takes his entourage to the stable where he first woke up. He even pets the horse there, pondering whether it's the same he encountered all those years ago, or if it's some random replacement. As they venture out into the fields, Kaga spots a young boy named Mio, who conveniently happens to have the exact same hair as him. Wow, what a coincidence. And because the kid's name slightly resembles his own, Michio, Kaga declares with absolute certainty that this youngster is the right age. So, Kaga reminisces about a night he spent with this mysterious beauty. Inspired by his memories, he decides to have a little chat with the boy and asks about his parents. The kid says his dear old dad kicked the bucket before he even had the pleasure of gracing this world with his presence. But fear not, because Kaga flashes a gentle smile and hands the youngling a sword called the Scimitar of Rage to give to his mother. Before they part ways, Kaga decides to bestow his wisdom upon the kid. He basically tells him that just because he wields a sword, it doesn't make him strong. He then apologizes to Roxanne for giving away the sword he originally gave to her. But of course, Roxanne, being the best girl, doesn't seem to mind. Instead, she simply asks who the kid was. So, Kaga enlightens her by saying he's never actually met the kid before, but he is probably the kid's father. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.